Awesome. Well, welcome to the South Carolina Food Policy Council General Membership Meeting. And as you are aware, we do these meetings about once a quarter, and we're so excited for this month's meeting and the lineup. We have some excellent speakers for you today. And then also, one of the things we want you to keep in mind as you're representing a variety of organizations across our state, there is a part of our agenda that we reserve for you all to come to the table with any questions, as well as any statements or any events that you have. We ask that it's at the end of the meeting, and we do ask that you keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. But be thinking, if there's something that you think that this council should know about or work that you're doing that you would like to share with everybody, please share that, and that will be around about 2:10 today, okay? And so the agenda, we have Nikki Siebert, who's going to be discussing cultivating connections with us today, and I'll be kicking that off and reading her bio relatively shortly. We also have Virginia Ellaby, who's with Pick 42 Foundation, just so happens to be the organization that I'm the executive director of, but she's going to be sharing with you delivering food the last mile. We have an amazing guest speaker. Our featured speaker of the afternoon is Ken Kolb, and he's going to talk about food deserts. Ken and I have, Alyssa will read his bio and tell you all about Ken. But I'm trying to tell you, he is an author. I think 2 books now. But he'll tell you all about. Is it 1 or 2 books? So he'll tell you all about that. And then we're going to wrap up with your opportunity to discuss whatever is going on within your organizations that you think would be good for everybody else to share. And also, we're always looking for speakers for the next meeting. So if you have somebody in your agency that you think would be, whether yourself or somebody else, that you think would have content that the rest of the state would like to hear about, please let us know, either me or Alyssa, as we work on building the next agenda. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker of the afternoon. And pardon me for putting my glasses on, because I don't want to miss a thing about her bio. It's incredible. Nikki Siebert. Nikki Siebert is a passionate advocate for increasing connectivity, equity, and resilience in the local food system. She's the proud owner of Wit Meets Grit, supporting food and farming organizations and fulfilling their missions across the Southeast, as well as a consultant with New Venture Advisors. One of her primary activities is the creation and coordination of the growing local South Carolina statewide local food system under the USDA Food System Partnership Program. Related projects include the South Carolina Food Policy, South Carolina Food Hub Network, the South Carolina Food System Roadmap Project, and the South Carolina Farmer Resource Guide. Ms. Siebert also serves on the following roles: advisor to the South Carolina Food Policy Council, yay, member of the Leadership Circle and Ad Hoc Advisory Committee Board of the North American Food System Leadership Network, on the steering committee of the Southern Regional Conference, member of the Rural Resource Coalition Local and Urban Food Subcommittee. Some of you guys are on that same subcommittee, and participant of the SCFPC Advisory Committee. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Ms. Nikki Siebert.
Well, thank you, Miko. Rolling out the red carpet. I'm like not sharing my camera, so you guys will actually be able to see my screen, but I am blushing. Getting introduced always makes me feel real shy. All right, so I'm going to share some slides today with you. I'm really excited to share some upcoming events. As noted, we're talking about cultivating connections. And so today is all about opportunities for you all as members to connect. And this is especially exciting because we have not been able to see each other in a minute. Oh, this is kicking me out of, is this showing up okay for you guys? All right, cool. Because it came into some weird presenter view on my side. Give me the strength to navigate this. So to start off, I just wanted to share that we've got an event coming up. It's the second year we're hosting an event under the South Carolina Food Policy Council's initiative, Growing Local South Carolina. And this will be the South Carolina Local Food Summit. For those of you all that participated this year, we're coming at it bigger, better, even more collaborative than last year. And so we've expanded the event this year, and it's actually a multi-day event. So these are all the public events that are coming up. So if you yourself are a farmer, a gardener, someone that works with farmers or gardeners, you work at a food hub, a food bank, doing food access, doing public health related to food. Really the cross section of folks that this is relevant to is pretty broad. But August 17th is going to be a newer collaborative event in partnership with Clemson, South Carolina's New and Beginning Farmer program. And if you've never been to this type of event before, it is lightning round style, super fast presentations. So you're not going to fall asleep in these sessions. You're going to be learning back to back about, right now we have 40 different organizations presenting at this event. So if you are wanting to understand who's working and serving in agriculture, food production, land access, providing technical assistance, grants, doing outreach. This is a way for both farmers and gardeners, as well as folks that work with those individuals and are working in the food system, to really understand the broader landscape of who, what, where, when. So we feel like that's a really highly structured, intense day. We felt like it would be nice to spend that evening just letting our hair down, relaxing, enjoying some delicious local food, walking around the gardens on the property, and having an opportunity to have some maybe longer, more engaging conversations that evening. That rolls us straight into August 18th, which is the Growing Local Gathering. Last year, this was called the Local Food Summit. We wanted to kind of convey that this is a much more conversational, intimate connection, where folks are really able to have, small group conversations, reflections about the role of race in the food system and how that can shape, change, challenge, or create opportunities within the food system. And this year, we're really integrating the South Carolina Food Policy Council's committees. And so all of the committee chairs are going to be there, taking all of the input we receive that day and finding a clear pathway towards action. So this is a good day if you really want to weigh in, you've got feedback, you've got ideas, or even you just want to listen and learn. The gathering is a great opportunity to engage in that process and really understand the role of the Food Policy Council in the broader food system. So I see a chat popping up, making sure there's not a question. Okay, so Kate is on the call. She is our local food coordinator. You can see her email there. She is the point of contact if you guys have questions. So please take note of that email, localfoodsc@gmail.com. So our tickets did go live for this event for the full public. I do want to note there are explicit scholarships for farmers. There's broader scholarships for food system leaders. We are taking applications for folks that may also need travel reimbursement, hotel stay, that need a participation stipend. We really don't want to miss an opportunity for someone to engage because of financial barriers. So there's all that information is available on the website or via that email. You can buy tickets for individual events. You can get a discount for buying full passes. And so these are all of the public facing events that are an opportunity for you guys to connect. For those of you guys that are actually working as a service provider or an outreach organization, or you're out working with these folks, we do have a pre-meeting schedule that is, I don't want to say it's invite only, because if you feel like you should be there, then you can let us know and we can make sure you get the code. But we are having a pre-meeting since folks are already going to be traveling. Many are going to be traveling the night before. We're going to be having a facilitated discussion, because there's a lot of changes happening in the broader food system. And we want to make sure that all these agencies and organizations are coming together to talk about opportunities for collaboration, including the local food purchase assistance program and this upcoming regional food system infrastructure funding. So again, if you feel like you have not received information about this and you feel like it would be appropriate for you to participate, feel free to email localfoodsc@gmail.com and we can make sure we get you the code so that ticket shows up for you. So like I said, we just released tickets. I shared the links. I'll share them again in the chat. You can follow us on Facebook through the Food Policy Council page. Growing Local SC has its own Instagram account. Please reshare and post. And I will be sharing the graphics. So you guys can use these graphics if you'd like on your own socials. And we have a link to the tickets as well. So, as noted, we have scholarships, and that's because of the incredible generosity of the organizations you see on this screen. So these folks explicitly provided support to lower the cost of tickets for participation, and also be able to offer these very generous, potentially all-inclusive scholarships as folks need. And I do want to note that every single event of this meeting will have an all local meal, all local foods included. So if you came last year and your hair wasn't blown back by the food, please know that keeping the food local was a key part of our event this year. The venue is beautiful. It's at Senate's Inn in downtown Columbia. And so this is a great opportunity to connect. Miko, you want me to pause for questions? You want me to go through all of the events?
No, I would love for you to pause for questions, please. And I have one. So you mentioned Columbia. What is the cost without the reimbursement?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and pull up let's see, let's pause. I'll go ahead and pull up the tickets page here. So this is what it's going to look like when you jump to the tickets page. We're going to go to buy tickets. You guys can see here that individually, the events are going to be more expensive. So if you got an all events pass for all 3 events, it's $100. If you go to just the resource rodeo, it's $50. If you do the rodeo and the mixer, it's $70. If you do the rodeo and the gathering, it's $85. So just the rodeo is $50, just the local food mixer is $25, just the gathering is $45. So you're going to be saving some money if you bundle these tickets. This is actually the $100 total is actually below the hard costs. So I know this feels like a lot of money, but this is even, we've been able to lower the costs because of the venue and the food and all of the support there. So again, if this is a barrier, if you're seeing these prizes and thinking my organization or my individually cannot participate, please let us know. And if you are a veteran farmer, there are specific allocations. Please reach out to us. We can give you the code. And if you are a current or past participant of the South Carolina New and Beginning Farmer Program, there are also explicit scholarships for that group.
Perfect. If you have a question, can you please raise your hand on Zoom? And Amy, would you mind helping me find if anybody has questions, any questions or even any comments? What do you guys think about this event? How it's developed? It's great work, Nikki. I love it. I'm very, very excited. Any questions? All right. So next one, Nikki.
Okay, so let's move on down. I'm not going to do my full, well, you know what, I'll be brave. I'll try and do it again. Nope, we're not doing a video call. We'll get there, y'all. So the next meeting that's coming up after this will be September 19th. Also going to be in Columbia. It'll be at the Phillips Market Center. So if you're an organization that is working in trying to support farmers, gardeners, or community members in preserving land, accessing land, doing conservation easements, supporting folks transitioning. So, an older farm family trying to make a plan for the next step of their career. If you're working with someone that has heirs property, any level of farm access, whether you're training farmers on best practices, the legality of farm access, best practices on land, this is a meeting for you. So this is again funded through the same grant for Growing Local, and this is being hosted in partnership with Rural Resource Coalition. And then we've got the American Farmland Trust coming to present on case studies from the Southeast of best practices. And the goal of this is to create state level coordination for those organizations and agencies trying to support the protection and access to farmland in South Carolina. And that includes things like legislative action, best practices and support at the county level. So if you are within your own county or jurisdiction, this would provide tools and resources for you on how to preserve farmland, because South Carolina is in the top 10 of most threatened farmland in the US. So that's why American Farmland Trust is really eager to partner to help make sure we're protecting farmland here. So that meeting is coming up. If you feel like you should be there, again, you can email the localfoodsc@gmail.com, or you can email me. I'll also drop my email in the chat, as well as Ken with the Rural Resource Coalition is collaborating there. And then finally, for all South Carolina Food Policy Council members, we are again partnering with SCACID and the Rural Resource Coalition with their Opportunity SC conference, which this year it's going to be in Myrtle Beach, so in Miko's neighborhood, the PD region, October 4th through the 6th. And if you guys are engaged in the Food Policy Council, if that's really your jam, then there's an opportunity this year on that Thursday to have a whole day of back-to-back sessions that are focused on food and health related topics, really coordinated by the Food Policy Council. And so that's going to be an opportunity again to engage and to talk through those activities and best practices in the broader food system. So not, the local food summit is really honing in on that production, distribution, access piece, but this is the broader network of the Food Policy Council. And there also is going to be a recommended farm tour the following day at a local farm. So opportunities to engage because of this partnership. SCACID is offering all South Carolina Food Policy Councils discounts to this conference. So you actually get the SCACID member discount of this event. If you want to just come on October 5th, I think it's $100 for just that day. And again, reach out if you feel like that's a financial barrier. We can talk with SCACID about other opportunities. So those are the events coming up. I'm happy to answer additional questions. If anyone has any, happy to share all of the links.
Thank you so much, Nikki. So just to regroup quickly, and again, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, come off mute. August, September, and October, these are all opportunities for us to meet in person. And Nikki, I thank you so much for stressing that please don't let, because your organization doesn't have the budget, stop you from coming. These are our opportunities to connect with each other. And because of so many opportunities, August, September, October, we decided that we're not going to have the in-person meeting of the South Carolina Food Policy Council. And I'm not sure, Nikki, you may have touched on it, but the Thrive, what do you call those things? I want to say chapter.
Track, yeah.
Thank you. The Thrive track of this SCACID event is all about the South Carolina Food Policy Council. And I do see a question in the text.
So I can share all the marketing materials and flyers for all of these. If you guys are more of a physical copy kind of person, I'll have flyers on my end, and I can ask SCACID about flyers on their end.
Awesome. Is that something, Amy, that we could email to members, those flyers?
Yes. Yeah, we can do that.
Perfect. And then also, Toria, I'm not sure if she's on, but we're now on Facebook more than ever before. So we're hoping to go past our 200 followers that we had. And Nikki, all of these will be put on our Facebook page as well as the Instagram page, right?
It's all up there right now. So big juicy posts are going out.
Share, 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 okay? So if you're ever like, okay, I know South Carolina Food Policy Council had something in August, something in September, go to our Facebook page, okay? So
yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm here, but Nikki, I want to give her props and flowers and all those things. She's been knocking it out the box from day one. So big shots to Nikki.
We're all in
Thanks
this
to
together,
Coria.
right?
And Susan, I really am hung up on juicy because I legit ate half a watermelon this morning, so it's just in the brain.
You gotta love watermelon season. Oh my goodness. It's really good. South Carolina watermelons are the best. But anyway, I digress. So thank you so much, Nikki. So moving on, the next part of our agenda is we're doing a spotlight on the local food policy councils at every single meeting that we have for general membership. And we have Zach Kernstadt, and Zach, if I said your last name wrong, I'm sorry, as well as Ashley Page. And they are the ones that are providing technical assistance for our local food policy councils. And if you're sitting here on this call and you're like, wait, I've asked to be a local food policy council. We want to have a local food policy council in our area. How's that happen? I'm gonna let you know, one of the things that the South Carolina Food Policy Council is doing is this year, we're figuring out how do we expand. 'Cause it's not easy to just go, from where we are to bring in all 46 counties on board. We definitely, if 46 counties want a local food policy council, we want to make sure that we're there to support it, be it a regional council or a council in every county. So Zach and Ashley are working on how do we get to the next steps. But in the meanwhile, we're spotlighting the ones that we currently. And this month, it's Marion County Food Policy Council, which I have her right here. I'm gonna put her on camera in a second. And it just so happens to be my county. And the person who you're going to meet, her name is Virginia Ellerby. She has been with the Marion County Food Policy Council from the very beginning as a project coordinator. Virginia has seen the Marion County Food Policy Council grow, and really there probably would be no Marion County Food Policy Council without Virginia Ellerby. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the camera. And please join me in welcoming Virginia Ellerby.
Good afternoon. My name is Virginia Ellerby, as Miko said, and I'm the program coordinator for PIC 42 Foundation. And I want to start off my presentation today with a short video.
It's being queued up.
My name is Amos Warren Dixon. I'm the fourth generation of the Dixon farm.
My name is Albert Vereen, and this is my daughter Madison.
I'm Magdalene Jenkins, but everyone calls me Maggie, so I'm better known as Maggie.
I'm Weatherly Thomas. I own True Luck Farms in Timmonsville, South Carolina, here in Florence County.
Working up to 42? Why?
Count them much.
We're gonna take this same water that I'm sterilizing the jars with and pour over the tomatoes. If the water is hot enough,
So that was just a short video. So what is it? We are fresh, we serve fresh produce. Food is provided for free. We have educational seminars, and programs are run until June 2025. Producers. Local fresh. That next slide, please. I'm sorry. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, who are our partners? So we have producers, distributors, and community. African-American, our producers are African-American and women solely owned farmers. Our distribution partners are our local churches and nonprofit agencies. We have 12 local churches in 3 counties and 3 nonprofits in 2 counties. Our community. This is never a charge for food or events. Everything is always free. Next slide, please. Delivering the last mile. So safety is always first. We do safe surf training. We distribute gloves and hand sanitizers to each one of our partners. We have lots of volunteers, and each LMD has between 5 and 10 volunteers every Thursday. Consistent packagings. We supply them with bags and instructions on how to package each one of our bags. Next slide. Making it fun. Community Garden Food Share is sponsored by Hootie and Blowfish Foundation. It's awesome, guys. We have a live DJ, and he plays music while we distribute the food. We allow the participants to come into our gardens and harvest. So we do this weekly. We have a community conversation, and we have food distributions, community events. Our Saturday events that we have is usually a Juneteenth Mullins event. And our community food pantry, that's coming soon, so just be on the lookout for it. Next slide. Our partners in love. So we have the USDA Local Food Purchase Assistance Corporation Cooperative Agreement Program. We have South Carolina Department of Agriculture, that's SCDA. We have the SCDA Agribusiness Center for Research and Entrepreneurship. And we have the City of Mullins and Clemson Cooperative Extension. Are there any questions?
Thank
Turn
you.
that back over to Miko.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Any questions for Virginia about the last mile distributions?
I'm
So,
curious, I'm curious what the learning curve has been handling fresh fruits and vegetables. And you guys also do meat, right? I'm
We
just
do.
curious, for other folks that might be interested in that, what were some things you were like, wow, we need to buy XYZ? Or I saw you guys had Serve Safe. It just seems like you guys have really checked some boxes and learned some things. What's that been like?
It's been a learning process. So we communicate with each other after each event so that if there's a change that we need to strategize on, then we do that. We basically covered a lot of the things, but every event is different. So we learn something new every time.
and if I can jump into, it's a race against time.
Right.
Because, when you're dealing with fresh local foods, it just seems like we have to move even faster than what's in a grocery store because the food that we're distributing is ripe. We're picking, our farmers are picking, tomatoes when they're already red. So it's a lot of those things, and be it coolers, freezers, refrigeration, trucks, it's really has been a learning curve. And to, like Virginia said, we learn every day. We're learning today.
Yes.
Thank you for that question, Nikki. All right, any other questions? All right, well, I am gonna turn it back over. Thank you so much, Virginia.
You're welcome.
She works so hard, y'all. I'm trying to tell you, like night and day, where we started and where we're at and where we're going are all kind of different things. So our next speaker, so we've covered so far connections, connections that you can make within your businesses. Virginia talked about the work that one of our local food policy councils are doing. And this next speaker, I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa Duncan. Alyssa is our vice chair, formerly the chair. So I was the vice chair, she was the chair. Now I'm the chair, she's the vice chair. So those of you that are out there that are thinking about joining the board, there's room for you. All right, so Alyssa, if you can take it from here and introduce our next speaker.
I'm happy to introduce Dr. Ken Cobb. So Dr. Ken Cobb is the author of Retail Inequality, Reframing the Food Desert Debate, which was a finalist for a 2023 James Beard Foundation Book Award in the category of Food Issues and Advocacy, and was a winner of the 2023 Book Prize awarded by the Association for the Study of Food and Society. Ever since returning from the Peace Corps to finish his PhD in sociology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Ken Cobb has spent the past 20 years conducting community-based research. He analyzes social problems with the goal of proposing practical solutions that harness readily available resources. By conducting in-depth interviews and spending time with neighborhood groups, Cobb seeks to empower the people he studies by providing them with the data they need to convince policymakers to take their complaints seriously. Ken Cobb is an expert on social inequality, community development, and programmatic solutions to persistent social problems. He is currently a professor and chair of sociology at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. I have had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Cobb speak here in Spartanburg and learned a whole host of things from him. And so I'm very excited to hear what he has to share with us today. Dr. Cobb.
Okay, can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for having me. I am really excited. I've been trying to get more involved with the South Carolina Food Policy Council and its various subcommittees. And so what I'm going to talk about today is I'll share some information. Since y'all kind of swim in these waters, a lot of people know a lot of the research about food and food access. So I'll kind of go a little quickly through that, and hopefully we'll save a lot of time at the end for a more robust discussion about what can we do about it. Okay, so I am gonna share my screen real quick. Okay. And back to the beginning. See, now I've shown you that it's not too long. All right. So here we are. Y'all can see my slides. All right. So yeah, this is a book that was the focus of a project of mine based off of in-depth research in 2 historically Black neighborhoods in Greenville, South Carolina. If y'all are familiar with the upstate and have been to the city of Greenville, they're called Southern Side and West Greenville. Ironically, the neighborhood of Southern Side is actually located north of West Greenville, which doesn't really make sense in geographic terms, but that's because it's named after the Southern Railway that runs adjacent to the community. These are 2 neighborhoods that suffered a lot of depopulation and divestment in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s as the textile industry collapsed. And were basically neglected for decades and underwent a real transformation in food retail, and they experienced significant loss in the number and availability of grocery stores. And so Greenville, South Carolina is unique, but this story of Greenville, it's actually economically and demographically representative of a lot of what many people call food deserts, although there's a lot of debate about that term. Should we call them food deserts, food apartheid? We'll get to that in a second. but they share a lot of the struggles. And so by examining these two neighborhoods and what they went through, I hope to propose some ideas about what actually shapes eating habits, what we got right, what we got wrong in our discussions about food deserts for the last 25 years, and with an eye towards proposing some practical solutions. We'd all love big, shiny grocery stores to move into neighborhoods that have been underserved, but that's a very expensive solution, and some municipalities can't necessarily afford it. So that could be the big prize that we're going for. But in the meantime, what can we do? What can we do? What are the circumstances and everyday realities of people that shape their eating behaviors, their nutritional dietary behavior, that we could have an impact on today, maybe possibly even with some of your organizations? Okay, so this is the book. It's available on Amazon and wherever you get that. If your organization really can't afford to buy a book, if you contact Nikki or Miko, I'll find a way to get you a copy. Like, just if you have real need, I'll get you a copy. I also am happy to speak with groups. If you're within driving distance, I'll come to you. If not, I'm a parent and I got to drive all over town taking my daughter to dance and stuff like that. So I can't travel too much, but I'm happy to Zoom in with you or discuss or consult and stuff like that. Furman pays me a living. So where I work, Furman University, they pay me a living. And I try and use that opportunity to help communities in need. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, so the rise and fall of the food desert concept. So what I'm going to talk about today, I need you to kind of be able to hold two things in your head, which is a little tricky, is that food deserts exist. Obviously, there are areas without full service grocery stores, okay? But the concept, as it was initially proposed, contained within it the idea of a solution, that if we bring healthier food closer and cheaper to people, it's going to be able to change what they eat, how they eat, and ultimately improve community health outcomes. So we've seen in the past 30, 40 years, rises in obesity rates, diabetes, hypertension, and these have become nationwide public health crises, and we're trying to come up with solutions. And this was a very popular concept that came with a solution kind of wrapped inside of it, that let's bring grocery stores to neighborhoods that don't have them anymore, that will change dietary habits and ultimately improve health outcomes. As I'll show, it didn't actually turn out in the way that we had hoped, but that doesn't mean that we need to just sort of move on to the next problem. Areas without grocery stores are a problem. Distance to healthy food can cause real obstacles for people. So you just need to kind of hold those two things in your head. I'll start off with it's kind of strange to think about it because this concept gets used a whole lot. It's actually in academic circles, it's quite a young concept. So it's only been around for less than 30 years now. It was originally coined in the mid-90s in Scotland at a really boring bureaucratic conference that produced a white paper that contained this term in it, food desert, and it was about a public housing project that had lost its grocery store, and residents were had more difficulty shopping for food because they also didn't have cars or easy access to vehicles or public transportation. So that concept gets started over in Scotland in the mid-90s. At the time, there were some beginning early types of research studies that started finding positive relationships, correlations between distance to grocery stores and less healthy eating habits. So this was measured in terms of fruit and vegetable consumption, interviewing people, what do you eat, how much do you eat, and trying to find, well, if a new grocery store came, would it get you to eat better, healthier foods? And so there was some initial support. The studies now, looking back, hindsight's 2020, weren't as well designed as we would have hoped in terms of they weren't controlled experiments. They didn't have pre-tests. They didn't have post-tests. These are the things that we can try and do to move from just correlation, two things happening at the same time, to causation, A leading to B. So by the 2011, this had concept of come from Scotland. It had sort of washed over the political landscape. It was a massive feature in a lot of political discourse within national political campaigns. It was a feature element of the White House Task Force on Childhood Obesity that was sponsored by the Obama administration, Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign. It was really looking at some of the early confirmation in the research and finding really positive relationships between distance to grocery stores and then poor health outcomes, with a goal towards subsidizing and inserting new food providers in under-resourced communities, with the hopes that it would change the way people eat, that would ultimately change health outcomes. At this time around 2012, doubts began to emerge between the relationship between just distance and diet. Okay, so when I say the early studies of the food desert concept made this association that there was a high correlation, possibly even a causation between distance and diet, what they're framing people's eating habits here, if we kind of step back, like why do people eat what they do? A lot of the assumptions embedded in this research was that people were unable to bypass cheaper, unhealthy food that was right in their neighborhood, unable to bypass that to get to healthier food that was farther away. Now, we know that healthier food is more expensive per calorie. And, you know, if you want fresh vegetables compared to more fattier canned, frozen, or heatable foods. But we didn't quite understand, the variables we were using for this were a little bit limited. It was really just kind of a geographic explanation. We're looking at people at a map and we're kind of treating them as two-dimensional objects. And so that's part of my research, is to show that people who live in areas without grocery stores, whether you want to call them food deserts, food apartheid, food swamps, food mirages, I'll get to that in a second, they're super innovative. I spent over 100 hours interviewing people in their homes, at their kitchen tables, on their front porches, asking them how, when, where they did their shopping, and they made their meals work. And these were the most creative, innovative, smart people that I had ever met, because they were handling challenges that would just sort of stump people. I mean, in terms of, just think how much of your life would be turned upside down by just a flat tire. But if you take that equivalent and say that people are trying to deal with flat tires on a day-to-day basis, just it's coming at them from left and right, the challenges that they're facing and they're trying to overcome, you have to respect them. Okay, there's a lot of assets in these communities, and it starts right here in terms of problem-solving ability. But one of the problems is that we had started to fund a lot of initiatives, the National Federal Healthy Food Financing Initiative, state level financing initiatives, and we weren't necessarily starting to see evidence that if we put grocery stores in there, just grocery stores, or just making healthier food closer to people, that it wasn't really changing the way people ate. Okay, and this is kind of a hard thing to admit, because I want this concept to be right. Like, I want this to be the silver bullet. Like, we just looked at the map and we thought that we had the solution, but it turned out to be a lot more complex. And so part of the book is me explaining my own narrative process of how hard it was for me to come to grips with this idea that maybe the concept wasn't as much as I had hoped it to be, that the solutions were going to be a lot more complex than just putting a store in a neighborhood and assuming that's going to fix everything. But we need to respect the data. If the data is not showing that people are changing the way people eat, then we need to go back and figure out, well, what is it? So to this day, there's still a lot of support for the food desert concept, or the idea that if we just put a grocery store in a neighborhood, that's going to change the way people eat. Now, everyone in this call is involved in the food system in some way, and know that grocery stores aren't really the only solution. They aren't the only provider of healthy foods. There's all sorts of means of producing healthier foods and getting them close to people. The problem is that the concept of food desert, because we were looking at this national level and this broad sort of 30,000 foot above view of these big maps of areas, that's the only way we could really measure it well. And so we're starting to try and explain, well, why is it that if we put a grocery store in a neighborhood, it's not necessarily changing the way people eat? And so we're trying to come up with alternative concepts. So other terminology you may have come across, food swamp would be it explains that there's plenty of food, even in food deserts, there's plenty of food. It's just not the greatest quality food. So this is convenience stores, fast food outlets. They offer lots of things to eat. They just aren't necessarily super healthy for you, and they are inexpensive. And so it becomes tempting for people who don't necessarily have a huge food budget. This can solve a lot of problems. But we can't just assume that these areas are devoid. It's not a desert. Okay, there's tons of life and there's vibrancy in these neighborhoods, and people are living and having families. It's just that they're kind of inundated with some poor options. Food mirage is another term that we're starting to see. One of the neighborhoods that I had studied in Greenville, South Carolina, not as the focus of my book, but it's another historically Black neighborhood, recently is undergoing a serious gentrification and racial displacement problem, and they just got a Whole Foods. Okay, so this is sort of the irony of trying to attract big supermarkets to come to town, is that they will come to town once the demographics start to shift. And so you're getting lots of wealthier new residents are pouring into particular parts of the city that they had once avoided. And now they're becoming attractive customers for national retailers like Whole Foods. But if you're really on a budget and you're kind of skittering above the poverty line and making your meals work every month is a real challenge, then, you know, a really high-end grocery store like that, it could be a block away, but it might as well be 10 miles away, because it's really, you're not going to shop inside it. So it's kind of close, but it's really not a viable solution. Food apartheid is the newest term that has come on the scene. It really helps explain the systemically racist housing and highway policies of the past that created the areas we call food deserts today. So you're looking at governmental spending in the 70s and 80s that subsidize interstate highways, that paved the way to the suburbs, that offered this off-ramp for white households and white residents within city centers across the country. This isn't just Greenville. And a phenomenon called white flight that took place all over the country. People left city centers, they moved to suburbs, and they took their pocketbooks with them. So they were once customers and had bolstered the buying power of city centers. But once they left, they drained the customer base and the overall buying power of urban centers. And food apartheid helps explain how those policies are related to food access today. But still, the term food desert is still pretty durable. There was recently, about a month ago, the Washington Post did a top-line editorial about it. And it kind of repeated a lot of the assumptions that researchers have found haven't really panned out. So this idea that distance alone determines diet, it just hasn't really held up. But it's really, this concept has really sort of taken root in the political consciousness. And so some of the reasons for this is that mapping or geographic arguments are really popular, or have been popular in the past 20 years, because mapping technology has become much easier. I used a lot of mapping software in writing this book and creating geographic analyses of people's eating habits. That kind of software was not available to researchers or in the affordable way it is now. And so the next one is that foodie movements have come on the scene and become really powerful political players. You've got slow food, you've got organic food, you've got non-GMO food, you've got food justice, you've got local food movements, all the things that a lot of the participants on this Zoom today, you are members of groups that see a possible outcome in, like, what would be a desired solution. And it'll be like, well, let's get a nice grocery store that sells healthy, convenient and affordable goods into neighborhoods. We can all agree on that solution. But if you really talk to people for different groups, they kind of have different ideas about what are the root causes of the problem. People in areas without grocery stores need really affordable food. Okay, their budget is very limited. They can't tolerate really high price spikes to their food budget. But local food and organic food, I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's great. We need it. But those things cost more to produce than what you can get at a large scale retailer, like, let's say, a Walmart. Okay. So anyone who's at a farmer's market know that those prices don't compare to your Walmart supercenter prices, because they're really two different markets. You're trying to support local farmers, and they need to sell their goods at the highest price possible to make a living and to stay on their land. But those high prices necessarily aren't what people in areas without grocery stores sometimes need. So this is the tricky and kind of sad part of digging into this concept of food deserts, is that you start to understand that people, you get them in the room and you think everybody agrees with one another, but really when you dig deep, you find out that there are some reasonable disagreements. And it's not because people are being illogical. It's just that there's different problems have different root causes, and they both require different types of solutions. Okay. And then why it's such a big topic today. Why is the Washington Post still writing big top line editorials about it? Because it's tragic. We need to eat. People need to eat. It's not a luxury item. Okay. We need this to survive. We need access to healthy food. And just because our financial situation may be such that we can't afford the healthiest products, doesn't necessarily mean that we deserve the diets that the large national retail industry has designed for us. Okay, so it's a public health problem. We want to help. I mean, people who live in these areas just want the right to be able to spend their own money at a nice grocery store. Okay, they're not asking for free stuff. Okay, they're okay with spending money. It's hard for them to travel to other side of the town to do the shopping. That has extra transportation costs. It takes extra time. Time is money. They just want it closer, and they can't control why these large grocery stores decide to go where they're going to go. Okay, so I'm going to jump into. I'm not going to take too much longer. I want to spend plenty of time. I'm going to skip through some of the items about my explanation, or what the research today says what drives shopping and eating patterns. Because some of these you're really familiar with, okay? So the first one is sort of a perception or a cultural appropriateness, okay? There's food in every neighborhood, but in some cases, they can be invisible in plain sight. So for example, I can pay for my food budget, I can meet those needs every month, okay? So I know where all the grocery stores are, all the ones that I crisscross, I know all those options. However, there are also a number of food pantries in my neighborhood that I don't necessarily know that they exist. I mean, I do because I'm a researcher and I've mapped them all out, but because I don't need them, I'm not shopping at them. Or there may be food retailers geared towards different types of cultural foods, okay, that I may drive by and I see it sells food, but I don't see that food as something for me, okay? That's for like another community. I'll shop somewhere else. So just because it exists on the map doesn't necessarily mean that people can see it. Okay, there are resources in communities that can be invisible in plain sight. And this is a lot of your organizations know this, because you have resources available and you're trying to make them aware to people. Okay, you have signs and people are still driving by. Just because you put it in a neighborhood doesn't necessarily mean people are going to see it. This one is pretty obvious. Can I afford it? Healthier food costs more per calorie. Okay, so just because you make it available and put it on shelves doesn't mean that people can't afford it. Okay, and if they can't afford it, then it's going to be very difficult for them to buy it. Okay, and then the next one is transportation. This is South Carolina. I don't know about you. In Greenville, our public transportation system is not very robust. It is very difficult, and even for people who live near bus stops and those on lines that get close to stores, there's all sorts of problems. Buses are great from getting you from bus stop to bus stop. But from getting to your house to the bus stop and getting from that bus stop to the door stop, okay, is a real challenge for people with mobility, crossing long parking lots. You've got rain, you've got heat, you've got weather. So it's kind of a smaller version of the last mile problem, is connecting those dots, not just from bus stop to bus stop, from bus stop to home to cupboard and to store and back. Okay, so you understand this, okay? You're all engaged in the food system. You know these problems. You've talked to people. You know how buses solve some problems but create others, okay? But here's two that I'm going to focus on in the next 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll be done. That are things that I found in my research that I haven't found in the existing research. So this is sort of my contribution to this larger discussion of new stuff. Okay, one is that we can still take an asset-based approach to these neighborhoods that don't have grocery stores. There's lots of know-how, there's lots of skill, okay? There's lots of transportation. It's just unequally distributed throughout the neighborhood. So I found in my study, people knew of the bus system. The bus system kind of met their needs, but they found it much easier to get a ride with a friend or a family member if they didn't have their own car, to go shopping. Okay. And so I call this the informal ride network. It was sort of like an underground little Uber system of people had connections. They knew who to call. And the price of these rides that they were able to get kind of was based on the degrees of separation between them and the person. So if it's your niece or nephew, you can basically make them take you to the store. All right. Their obligations, that's kind of how families work. But if it's a friend of a friend, then, you know, you might have to give them a little money for gas, or maybe you buy them a little food or something like that. And if it's a friend of a friend of a friend, and you're in a crisis mode, then the price is just going up every time, because they're basically just serving as a taxi driver for you. They're not doing it as a favor to any one of their own personal friends. And so this has an implication for a possible solution, is that these ride networks exist in basically every neighborhood. And so we're spending thousands of dollars on the federal level, millions of dollars, trying to create these really robust solutions to convince very large retailers to move in. When if we can just subsidize informal ride networks within neighborhoods to give the nieces and nephews, to give the aunts and uncles some vouchers that they can give to their nieces and nephews for a ride that they can use to pay for food at that store. It's a coupon, basically. It's a voucher. It can be split between the retailer, between municipalities. It keeps the money in the neighborhood, okay? It's supporting a system that people are already used to. They know family. They're willing to get in a car with them. But to try and even just to create a single new bus line can cost so much money and requires so much infrastructure on a citywide basis. It's definitely a goal, but it's out there. It's going to take a while to get to. So informal ride networks is one way that you can take advantage of the existing assets within a community and keep the money within that community. Okay, the next one that really has a big driver of why and how people eat the way they do is what I call household dynamics. So when I talk to people, especially older folks who were kind of empty nesters living alone, they would describe a history of like an evolution of their cooking. When they had kids in the house, they cooked a lot and they fed their kids. But as the kids got older and moved away, then they started to eat less. Why? Because they're by themselves. They don't really need a whole lot of food to cook a big meal. It's really just going to produce a lot of leftovers that are going to sit in the fridge. And it's going to become less and less attractive the more often they have to go and revisit them. I like lasagna, but I don't want to eat lasagna 7 days in a row. Okay, so if I'm living by myself, then smaller portions are more attractive to me. But smaller portions, it doesn't make a whole lot of economic sense to go to the grocery store to shop to cook a meal just for one person. Okay, where this comes into play in the national context is that household size in the United States has been declining for the past half century. Okay, it went from 3.16 to about 2.55. There's 1 in 7 American adults lives alone. All right, so folks on the call who remember when they left home, or maybe when they graduated from college and they got their first place, they came to see quickly that the eating habits or the practices that they engaged in with their family when they were living with others in the household didn't really quite make sense. In many cases, it really doesn't make sense, time or money-wise, to cook for yourself if you're just eating alone. And so they're finding convenience items, things that can be preheated, that are pre-cooked, like pre or par cooked, that heat up in their homes. They're quick, they're flavorful, they don't require a whole lot of cleanup. They just kind of meet the needs of their household dynamics. So if we're going to think about that, what are the situations that would enable the model for healthy cooking that grocery stores provide, is that we need to kind of recreate some of the economies of scale of the households of the past. And so it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to cook by yourself, but if you could get together with a bunch of people, collectively pool your money, buy at wholesale prices, do some meal prep amongst the group, maybe bring in a local nutritionist that can help instruct you how to do a healthy twist on a familiar favorite. You could do that meal prep and it would be affordable per item because you're operating on a wholesale basis, and you're basically recreating what the large family home cooking model used to be in this country. It's just that we don't have that because we don't have those large household sizes anymore. And so this is just 2 ways. Subsidizing informal ride networks takes advantage of existing assets. Cooperative meal prep groups, okay, it could be a Bible study group, it could be a local book club, or whatever it is. There are people who, if they're living alone, it's challenging for them to prepare individual meals, but as a collective group, they might be more likely to do it, especially if you could design those groups around existing social networks. You know, food is very sensitive. People don't necessarily want to hang out with strangers and prepare food together. Okay, so but these groups already exist. They just don't happen to live in the same household with one another. Okay, so taking advantage of those community-based assets. So I'm going to leave it right there in terms of trying to look at how these everyday realities shape how and why people eat what they do. Again, I'm all for getting grocery stores to move into areas where they abandoned 10, 20 years ago. However, I've seen the data, and just because you bring a grocery store doesn't necessarily mean people are going to change exactly what they eat overnight. Okay, people's eating habits are ingrained in the fabric of their lives. You can't just pull out one thread and swap in a new one and expect them to change eating overnight. People want grocery stores to come to their neighborhood, but evidence shows when those grocery stores come, they're going to buy the same products that they bought before. They're just going to save a lot of time and money because they don't have to go far away to them, and they don't have to buy them at convenience store upscale prices. So, all right, so I'll leave it there, and we'll just, I can open it up to Q&A, any questions you have, or honestly, if you have some groups or you have some solutions in mind, I can show you how they match up with some of these everyday realities. And again, you know, I'm all for if you have a group and you're trying to improve eating habits in your community, I want to help you. And so please don't take this as it's not a critique of the food desert debate, like they don't exist. They do exist. It's just, we didn't quite understand it as well as we could have because we didn't sit down and talk to people about how and why they really do eat in their everyday life.
Awesome. Well, Ken, we do have some questions queued up for you. One, I just have to say, thank you so much for studying this and writing a book on it. The one thing that I'm finding out, especially in poor communities across South Carolina, they're not a monolith, but they are very, very similar in many, many, many ways. And you have hit on that. You've hit on that. So we're gonna go ahead to the chat and get the questions out. And then I have one final question before you wrap up. All right, so the first question in the chat comes from Susan. And she says, have you heard about any communities that are trying the stabilize and informal ride sharing networks within neighborhoods? Do you know any communities that are actually doing that work?
Well, they're close.
Subsidizing, sorry, not stabilizing.
The most, the closest example is Washington, D.C. And what they offer are basically vouchers for cabs. And I think that's a step in the right direction because the cabs can fill in the gaps between their public transportation system. Now, Washington, D.C. has a much more robust public transportation system than a lot of other smaller cities. What I'm saying is that these systems become overly bureaucratized in terms of there's all this means testing, like who can become eligible for these vouchers. You have to submit all this financial paperwork and you have to clear all these hurdles and all this stuff. The thing is that stores have an incentive of getting people inside their doors. And so they offer coupons all the time. And they have budgets available for this type of stuff. Municipalities know that one, paying vouchers to cab drivers is going to be expensive. Doing all the bureaucratic paperwork to verify the incomes of people doing it is going to require all sorts of other labor and costs. There's not a whole lot of fraud going on. And even if it is a tiny, like maybe one person takes advantage of a coupon that shouldn't have deserved it, if they're just shopping at their local grocery store. I mean, the grocery store still makes money because you bring people, you got a $10 or $15 voucher, like that person's, if they're using that voucher, they get one a month, they need to do a big shop. People do, when the money comes in, people spend it because if they don't spend it today, another bill is going to come tomorrow. All right. You just gotta, when the windfall comes, you just need to spend it because there's really not a whole lot of value in trying to parse it out and do multiple shops over the course of the month. And so I'd say decrease the bureaucratic hurdles and keep the money in the neighborhood and just give it directly to the people. Okay. The shoppers and their drivers, which are in the same family, that is investment within the community and increases the overall buying power of it, which will support the retailers and help them stay in business.
So Ken, is the program in DC, is it city funded or are there private dollars or?
It's mostly city. I mean, they have their own healthy food financing initiative, and it comes out of that.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I mean, I mean, again, I'm coming from Greenville, so it's like everything's got to be a public-private partnership. It's like these are retailers who are in the business of making profits, and they want help bringing customers into their doors, and local governments can help bring them to their doors if they could participate in this voucher program.
Cool.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Susan, for your question. Elise Ashby, are you able to come off mute to ask your question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Ken, and what was my question was, how realistic is this food sharing in rural communities? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's much more geared towards urban neighborhoods, but people in rural communities still are members of groups of existing social networks. They come together for fellowship or friendship or work or play or whatever reason, and they come into contact with other people who operate in their social circles. And if they're in the same social circles, they probably have similar economic circumstances. And so, again, this would have to be a subsidized program that could have to identify existing groups, identify ways to save money through wholesale buying, okay? Even if that's just people pooling together resources, maybe getting some subsidized dollars and going to a Walmart supercenter, okay? And then some sort of shared meeting space, even if it's a church kitchen or whatever it may be. Again, these are ways that we can increase capacity of communities, because this could also be paired with a grant to try and bring a local kitchen up to DHEC standards, okay? And so that group could work in there, but then also offer more entrepreneurial opportunities for value add, food prep, food preservation. And so it's a new program. Again, if you could subsidize something like this, the costs are much less than trying to recruit a grocery store to come to that rural community. It takes advantage of existing social networks. And if there were any sort of benefits you could tag along to it, like a co-grant to upfit an existing local kitchen, those investments stay in that neighborhood or stay in that community, okay? That kitchen is there. So I'm very much an advocate for trying to do grants that really do no harm, that take the money and try and get it most efficiently to the people who need it the most. And even if, let's say, the one meal kit cooperative did not pan out over time, they're still left with the know-how, okay, the new nutritional tips of how to do that food prep together, and maybe even some material infrastructure that came along with it.
Thank you so much. Takoria, can you come off mute and ask your question, please? Give her a second to get off mute. Okay, if not, I will go ahead and ask Takoria's question. Takoria wants to know.
Here I am.
Okay, thank you so much.
I got okra all over my hands. I was at this really great event last night in Columbia. Got a whole lot of fresh okra, and I don't know, Benita's on this call, but I can't help but to say the stuff is so good. And okay, back to the question. So yeah, Ken, I really appreciate your work, and that's some great research that you've done. And kind of thinking about, for me, so I'm looking at like North Columbia, and I know you're in Greenville. So North Columbia's got a lot of unused parcels of land and some places that could be demolition ready. So I'm wondering if there's any research around staffed community gardens in urban areas like that, where it's probably more of a food mirage type thing going on. And if there's any research around how that affects, or if that affects communities' food choices when they have a growing living garden like right in the middle of them that they can access as someone they know or is familiar with runs.
Yeah, well, I did. I mean, I studied the whole panoply. Although inserting a grocery store, I call it a retail intervention, is the most common and sort of attractive pick. You have all sorts of efforts to include more urban production. So this could be urban farms, small businesses. This could be farmers markets. This can be community gardens. This can be CSA programs that can take advantage of either growing it yourself or direct consumer sales. So you cut out the middle person if you can go directly from the farmer to the buyer. One of the challenges is that people need healthy food year round. And the upstate first frost is October 15th. And so, to get people to have this resource per part of the year, as opposed to have access to vegetable production throughout the entire year, becomes a little bit of a challenge. And it's also, although I love urban farming, and I interviewed a lot of urban farmers, and community gardening is great. They solve a lot of problems, but again, if you're an urban farmer, one, you need to sell your products to keep yourself in business, and you can't compete against a Walmart. Okay, they're just producing at such a large scale that they can drop those prices down. Community garden, again, you solve a lot of those problems, but you're investing a lot of time, a lot of energy. It becomes challenging because the transportation to get to the community garden is something that, even if it's only a half mile away, it's hot. The growing season it can be challenging. And so the benefit of grocery stores is that they're open year round. They're open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. They're community depots, refrigerated warehouses where the food is kept fresh and available year round. Those people's lives need that kind of flexibility because sometimes they can only shop at night or after they pick up their kids. So people's lives are kind of fixed in terms of through work, through worship, through family, through their kids and stuff like that. To carve out an extra couple of hours a week to work on a community garden plot is a lot to ask some people. And so again, community gardens do solve all sorts of problems. They get more eyes on the neighborhood. They bring communities together. They get people to understand where food comes from. They can get a source of appreciation for healthier foods. All those are good things. But when it comes to like lifelong changes to fruit and vegetable consumption, it's only one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Thank you so much, Ken. And let me tell you, it's going down in the chat. All right. So Ken, a lot of people want to know how they can connect with you. How can they connect with you after this call?
Well, I think Nikki put some links in there. Today wasn't the best day. I'm starting to launch a new website. So I had a nice website for the book that you can't quite access just this second, but it's kenkolb.com. You go to that. Let's see.
Perfect. I see Nikki just dropped that. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Nikki is like Johnny on the spot. Her copy and paste game is super, super strong. And
if you just Google me, whatever, I've got like 19 Twitter followers, so I'm pretty easy to find. And so you can, yeah, I'm happy to, again, if you got a group and you're trying to make the world a better place, I'll talk to you and I'll help you in any way I can.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Zach, for answering the question on the subsidized ride that's in Columbia. So if you're interested in learning more about that, check out the chat. It's in there. And then the last question for you, Ken, is that your bio says that you're a James Beard nominee. James Beard nominee.
Yeah.
Anybody who watches the Food Channel, that's all we hear about.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what were you nominated for briefly?
Well, they opened up, they do book awards. And so I wrote a food book, but they opened it up. The James Beard Foundation is trying to get more. It's not just about the high-end chefs, but it's also about the food access, food systems, food equity. And so they opened up the competition to nonfiction food writers that deal with social justice issues. Now, I didn't win, so I'm going to do a plug for the winner because her book is really awesome. She's really nice. The winning book was Eating While Black: Food Shaming in America. And so the author is at Maryland, and it's a fantastic book, and I've read it. And if I was on the committee, I would have voted for that too. But it was a fun event. I got to go to Chicago and see a whole bunch of famous food people, that I see on the cooking shows and stuff like that. And they had a lot of free food. I go to academic conferences and we know what the food spread is like. And I'm sure it's going to be awesome in Myrtle Beach. Don't get me wrong, but the James Beard folks know how to do the food layout. So that was gained a few pounds on that trip.
I bet they do. And listen, what a thing to put on your bio too. That's awesome. That's awesome. So thank you so much, Ken. I really, we, the South Carolina Food Policy Council, appreciate you agreeing to present today, as well as being involved with us in our various committees. So thank you so much, and thank you for your awesome work. All right. So guys, so from here, if you have anything, we're asking if you have any grants that you have open in your organization, grants that you would like to share, events that are coming up in your, oh, Yvonne, you did have a question, and I'm sorry about, I did miss your question. Ken, I will send, Yvonne has a question, I'll send it to you after so you can answer it directly. Okay, perfect. But if you have any grants or any events or programs in your organization you would like to share, please raise your hand, come off mute, and then now's your opportunity to share it with the council. All right, we have Susan. You have the floor.
Thanks. You are an awesome meeting facilitator, Miko, by the way. Very entertained by your commentary. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the upcoming Farm Bill and advocacy that we can be doing collaboratively, conversations that we can have with our senators and representatives, especially in the month of August. And Ome, you might have some more to add to this, but because Ome has kind of been coordinating with the CSNAP committee, did I say that right? Around Farm Bill advocacy, but I especially wanted to mention that there is a big opportunity to get the drug lifetime ban on SNAP for people with drug felony convictions repealed in this Farm Bill. And so there's a big push being led by the Drug Policy Alliance. And there's like very soon, any day now, there will be a sign-on letter that that we would like to deliver to Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham and all of our representatives. So I don't know if there's a way that I can send it around to all of the membership, but I will push it out and hope that y'all, if you support that issue, will sign on and give a call or set up a meeting with your elected officials.
And Takoria or Amy, we do have a way, right? Where they send the email to in order to get information out to the council? I should know this, I'm sorry. I don't.
I'll drop it in the chat, but the South Carolina Food Policy Council Gmail, if you send it, Susan, we can send it to the entire list.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank
And
you.
I just want to add, it's Ome here, working with Susan on the advocacy stuff, that we are trying to reach out to our South Carolina delegation. No hits yet. A bit of interest from Senator Scott's office, but I don't think it's serious. But if we do hit upon anything, we'll be reaching out to you if it's your representative. Like, we know who everyone is on the call and where they are, but we want to try to do some site visits in August.
Okay, great. And Omi and Susan, let me know if I can help in any way. I don't mind knocking on some doors. They love to see me not.
I'm here for it.
Awesome, awesome. All right, and so we have Brendan, if you could come off mute, please.
Hey, good afternoon, Brendan Buttimer, and now with Reinvestment Fund out of Philadelphia. So most of you I know. I just wanted to share that I just started my 4th month with Reinvestment Fund. We're a community development financial institution. So I'm doing a lot of the same things I did at SCCLF, but on a much larger scale and more on a national scale. However, we are the administrator of the HFFI awards on healthy food access for more on the retail line, and we provide technical assistance. And so I'm going to post a couple of things. Thank you, Carrie, in the chat, just so you can get an idea of sort of who we are and what we do. I don't think there's a lot of knowledge about who the reinvestment fund is in South Carolina, but you probably know them in one form or another. It's just that you didn't put two and two together. And just from my background, I've worked with them I actually worked with them for over 10 years, back to Hub City Farmers Market. I've worked with them. So, and as fate would have it, I am the national director, or I'm sorry, I'm the senior director of lending and investments still in Spartanburg, but I have been pushed into food lending now again. So I'm sort of doing a full circle back to healthy food access lending on large projects. So I'm happy to help, but I will mention there was a significant announcement by Secretary Vilsack Thursday in Philadelphia, which is where Reinvestment Fund is based. There were a bunch of programs announced. Nikki mentioned that there were a couple of local groups that did not get funded, and sorry to hear that, but there's going to be about another 30 million in HFFI coming down the line. And I have some different ideas about how to approach some of this. So if you are working on especially systems-wide projects that involve access, particularly around retail or sort of last mile, I would love to talk to you about that. And I'll drop my email in the chat as well. And you're welcome to reach out to me. Do not ask me for a grant. I will point you to where you go, wait to apply. That's about the best I can do. I can help you with some technical assistance. And I know there are a couple of organizations in the state that are already working on TA for future grant awards from the HFFI fund. So, but I wanted to share that because Nikki and I have been talking offline. There's not enough of this. People are not applying for this money in South Carolina, and that's kind of ridiculous because God knows we need it. And so there are opportunities there for you, but you got to reach out and put your name in the hat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I saw Nikki said we're lucky to have you. So thank you so much. And again, the information is in the chat. So Nikki gave everybody instructions on how to save it. I'm going to save it, but you'll get it when we record the video, when we send the video recording out as well. So we have two more hands up. We're going to go with Natalie. And then from Natalie, we'll go to Elise. And if you guys can please keep it to 2 minutes now. You guys are our last two. Natalie?
All right, hello, my name is Natalie. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Well, my little presentation will be quick. I own a business called Flavored Fork, and what I do is offer healthy cooking classes for mainly children, but I also offer some adult classes as well. And right now I do a lot of classes over in the Northeast at some elementary schools as part of their 21st century program. But I also, like I said, offer individual classes for children as well. And all about you trying to get the entire family to eat healthy, have fun in the kitchen, help them find access to fresh foods. And I'm partnering with some nonprofits right now to try to get some grants in order to provide access to healthy foods and show them how to cook the healthy foods. So I just wanted to put that out there in case anyone was interested in needing cooking demonstrations to show them not only how to get the food, but what to do with the food when you get it, because sometimes depending on the type of food, some folks don't know what it is, or much less what to do with it. So family style programs, individual classes, I'm interested in doing any of that, working with anyone, collaborating with any nonprofits that are out there.
Love it. And so how do we reach out to you, Natalie? How do folks find you?
I can put my information in the chat, but I'm based out of Lexington, and you can find me online on Facebook at Flavored Fork, and then also on Instagram at Flavored Fork LLC. And my number is 803-361-8435. And I'll drop all that in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Elise.
Hey, everybody. I am Elise Ashby. I am the still the
board president for the South Carolina Association of Farmers Markets, and National Farmers Market Week is coming up August 6th through 12th. And Commissioner Weathers will be visiting a few of the farmers markets to present the new farmers market proclamation. I will let everybody know when and where so that we can come out and show support to those farmers markets that he will be presenting at. So that was it. That's my announcement.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And Elise, when you get that, please send it to the South Carolina Food Policy email as well, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So we have come to the end of our program right on time, y'all. So I'm happy about that. Want to remind everybody that our next Zoom meeting, the meeting will be in Zoom. It's going to be on Tuesday, October 24th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Same time, same place. We do ask that if you can please help us to continue to build our membership of the South Carolina Food Policy Council. As you know, it is free. This information is very supportive and helpful for folks that do work like us. And all they need to do to join is to visit our website, scfoodpolicy.org. You can please become little ambassadors. When you see our information on social, don't just look at it, please share it, because this is something new that we're trying to put out there. We're trying to really promote our social, because you've heard a few people talking and they talk about advocacy, and the best way to advocate is in numbers, all right? So with that, I want to thank you all for attending the South Carolina Food Policy Council General Membership Meeting, and I'll see you in August, right? At the Royal Resource Rodeo. All right, bye guys.
Bye. Thank you, Miko.